Hi everybody and welcome to a brand new episode of Plaguenarr, and today I'm gonna show you how to speed paint some awesome metallic Thousand Sons. And to start off with, we're gonna start to prime the mini black and then using some Vallejo gunmetal gray from the airbrush series, and we're gonna apply it this time with an airbrush. And just a little side note here, I was creating this guide as I was reviewing the Galeri Mebius 0.2mm Premium Series Double Action airbrush. And I was really skeptical about the airbrush because of the price, and at the end of the guide I was convinced that this is probably the best hobby airbrush you could buy for a small amount of money actually. But there will be a separate review video. I just wanted to inform you why I used an airbrush, and now enjoy the guide and have some fun. And this is pretty straightforward here. We simply just base coat all the surfaces evenly with Vallejo gunmetal gray. And in the second step, we're using Pro Acryl transparent black mixed down with 2 parts airbrush thinner and 1 part color. And we're using this to shade the metal colors a little bit down. And a couple of you might think, hey, why didn't he create shadows as he was base coating the mini with the metallics? And the answer is pretty simple. If you base coat a mini with metallics and you have a matte surface, you have the problem that you create some kind of sparkling if you leave certain areas a little bit darker because it's not fully covered by the metal pigments. And this is why I came up a couple of years ago with the idea to simply use transparent or contrast colors, thin them down and tone the metal tones afterwards down to create a much more realistic shadow and light feeling, even on a metallic surface. And this is also pretty straightforward. You can simply take a photo under a lamp of your primed mini and use this photo as a reference where to place the shadows. And now we're simply inverting our last step and using Vallejo Airbrush Series Silver to create a couple of highlights. And we can here basically use the same reference picture as we used for the shadow and place the lightning where the mini appeared brightest on the photo. In my case, it was the right shoulder pad, the right leg, the right arm, and the left front of the shoulder pad. Of course, the right side of the face and the right side of the, can I say, rabbit ears? So for the next step, to apply the color, we're using transparent blue and transparent green of Pro Acryl, and we mix this with 2 parts transparent blue, 1 part transparent green and 3 parts airbrush thinner. So this makes 9 drops of airbrush thinner, 2 drops of transparent blue and 1 drop of transparent green. And this is basically a very thin and translucent mix, but I use the advantage of this translucency to be able to apply thinner layers on the areas where more light would appear to create a right balance between shadow and light on the mini. And I always start with the shadowed areas to get a better feeling for how the darker areas appear with this color shift. And then I am able to evaluate how thin my layers have to be in the more lightened areas. as you can see, I'm doing this with short sprays, step by step, very slowly, just to adjust the color shift very slowly and create the result I had in my mind. And this step takes around 5 to 10 minutes, and then you should end up with a blue turquoise color shift, like this. And then we're moving on to rich gold of Pro Acryl to start painting the trims, and we're mixing this down with 1 part color and 1 part airbrush thinner, which is basically a 50-50 mix of color and airbrush thinner. And then we're simply just base coating all of the trims. And this is basically the part that took the most of the time of the whole guide. I tried to save time in other steps, especially the highlighting of the gold, just to save you some time here and make this still be able to be a speed painting guide. And this is the part where you can feel the advantage of thinning the metallics down with airbrush thinner. This super fluid consistency makes it much easier to paint all of the trims, even in the areas that are hard to reach. And then we're basically using the same rich gold 1:1 airbrush thinner mix to base coat all the ornaments we want to appear gold. Then we're moving back to Gunmetal Grey of the Vallejo airbrush series, and we're base coating the barrel of the Flamethrower, the metallic parts on the backpack, the cables on the face mask, and the subsuit as well. And with Coal Black of Pro Acryl, we're then simply just base coating the casing of the Flamethrower, and I would recommend you to do this in a later stage because we will masking this area anyway, so it would be easier to simply just paint it after a different step. We're then moving back to transparent blue and transparent green, and we're mixing this again with 2 parts blue, 1 part green, and now we add a small amount of water because we will use this mix as a watered version to fix up any messes we did while we're painting the trims and other parts. And my tip here to cover the mess ups in the same texture as the airbrush has base coated the surface, simply just stipple this mix on the mess ups you want to cover. You can also use brush strokes on flat surfaces. I would not recommend you that on any round surface because this could result in brush streaks that are visible over the armor. And then it's time to use bright neutral gray of Pro Acryl to simply base coat the Tabard. And I would also recommend you to do this after the next step, like with the Flamethrower casing, because you won't have to mask this area for the dry brushing stage. Then we're taking some liquid mask. I used Pika Pro liquid mask, and we're protecting the parts that shouldn't be affected by the metallic dry brush. And if I would have been smarter, I've simply just painted the Flamethrower casing and the Tabard after this stage and just needed to cover the shoulder pads. With the liquid mask dry, we're then able to prepare our texture palette with Pro Acryl Silver and start dry brushing on some highlights to the middle parts, the armor and the gold trims. For the dry brushing itself, I'm using an Artis Opus Series D size M brush, and I'm doing this not in circular motions like I do regularly. I'm doing strokes from above and the lower parts just to catch every edge basically. And with this technique we can save a massive amount of time we've spent already into base coating the trims, and within this stage we're basically highlighting everything. We're highlighting the armor trims, we're highlighting the bolts, we're highlighting the silver metal parts, and we're highlighting the edges of the armor as well. And we're protected the shoulder pads because if we wouldn't have protected them, they would get big silver spots because of their round shape. And this is why we simply protected them. Now we're removing the liquid mask from every part to go on with the oil wash. And everything we needed to highlight with silver is highlighted and has smooth raised surfaces and some definition. In the end, you should end up with something like this. And then we're protecting the whole mini with gloss varnish to prepare it for the oil wash. And I finally was able to give you a little insight how I apply gloss varnishes. As you can see, I'm also doing short sprays just fall around the mini, and then I let the mini dry for around about half an hour to an hour. To apply an ancient look and bring some depth to the armor, we're using Schminke Burnt Sienna and Schminke Ivory in a 50-50 mix and using this as a base for our oil wash. And with some mineral spirit, we are thinning this down to the oil wash consistency we want to use to apply. And the formula I always recommend is that you add as much mineral spirit that you achieve a contrast color-like consistency. Then we're using a synthetic brush and applying the oil wash all over the mini. And after a couple of brush strokes, you already can see how this gives a certain amount of depth and the ancient look I was talking about to the armor. In the end, if we remove all the remainings, this will just look really, really awesome. I was really, really happy with the result in the end. By the way, if you like this kind of guides, I would be really proud if you simply like, share, or even subscribe to my channel. And here you can see the still wet oil wash version. This needs now round about 12 hours and then you have something like this. This is the dried version and we can go on to paint this mini. And then it's time to use some eyeshadow applicator to remove the remainings. You can also use a Q-tip. I just prefer eyeshadow applicators because they don't leave any lint. And what's important that you don't use too much pressure here, just do this very gently, otherwise you will also remove the deep recess shade that gives that mini this ancient look. And then you should end up with something like this. Now it's looking very glossy. This is something we will remove now by simply applicating a Vallejo Premium Satin Varnish Coat all over the Mini. And we're doing this basically in the same way like we did with the gloss varnish, short sprays, just fully around the Mini, cover every surface, and then you need to let it dry for at least 15 to 20 minutes. And then you should end up with something like this to go on with the paint job. And then we're using some pure neutral gray to create a little bit of volumetric highlights on the Tabard. I did a little mess up here. I did not remove the fully liquid mask. This is why you now see a deep shadow on the right side. And in a couple of seconds, I will remove this remaining liquid mask and remove the shadow as well. And this is why I used in a later part a little bit of Black Templar thinned down with water to create this shadow on the Tabard again. And here you can see me fixing the shadow, and this is another great example how mistakes can happen. As you can see, I've done 3 mistakes already. I should have painted the gun casing later, the Tabard later after the dry brushing stage, and now I did the mistake with the shadow. But as I always say, mistakes happen, don't worry about it. Almost everything can be fixed in miniature painting. Now we're using some bold titanium white, and we're thinning this down with airbrush thinner. We're using 2 parts airbrush thinner to 1 part bold titanium white. And what we're doing, we're just simply using this as a recess shade for the runes that appear on the Flamethrower. And we will use this as a base to create glowing runes while we're painting the glowing eyes. And we're using airbrush thinner because this helps this mix to flow into the recesses a little bit more nicely. And now we're going over to painting the eyes, and we're using Pro Acryl Green, and we're mixing this just gently with water. And what we're doing now, we're base coating the entry eye lenses, including the corners around. If you struggle a little bit with filling the eyes, you can thin it a little bit more down. But I would recommend you this only for the stage now. In the following steps, you need a little bit more precision. I also thought I'd give this a try on the bird head on the Flamethrower as well. Now it's time to highlight the eyes by using golden yellow in a 2-to-1 mix with green of Pro Acryl, so 2 parts green, 1 part yellow, to create a little bit of a brighter greenish tone we can use to create our first highlight. And the first highlight is pretty simple. We're just painting the whole eye lens with a center focused highlight. So we're starting from the right side into the direction to the center. Then we're starting from the left side into the direction of the center. And after we have finished that, we are adding a small edge highlight under the eye in the size of the whole eye lens. And then we're repeating the step on the right eye as well. then for the next highlight, we're using 3 parts golden yellow and 1 part green to create an even brighter green mix. And for this highlight, it's a little bit more tricky because we need a little bit of more precision. You can see how I support my hands to each other to get this kind of precision. And we're basically highlighting the eye in the same way. We're making a center focused highlight, but just in the size of 2/3 of the eye lens. And then we're also creating an edge highlight under the lens in the size of the highlight we've done inside the lens. Don't forget the bird. As a final highlight, we're now picking up some pure golden yellow, and we're again doing a center focused highlight, but now in 1/3 of the size of the eye lens. If you struggle a little bit with making this kind of a small highlight, I would recommend you to just do a small dot highlight with a little bit of a thinner mix of this golden yellow. And to support this shine effect a little bit more, we're also adding a small dot highlight on the edge underneath. With our 3-to-1 mix of green, we can now add a little bit of water to make this also a little bit more fluid, and simply use this highlight mix to create our glowing runes on the Flamethrower. And to highlight the gun casing at least a little bit, we're then adding a little bit of dark warm gray and create some thick edge highlights all around the Flamethrower casing. With neutral gray, we're then adding a couple of thinner edge highlights all around the Flamethrower casing and finishing the Flamethrower casing up with a couple of light reflection highlights with bright neutral gray on the upper edges. And then you should end up with something like this, and we can move on with the base. And for the basing, we're doing a quick 2-minute basing by using a black primed Necromunda base, and we're adding some dark silver of Pro Acryl by dry brushing the whole base in circular motions. These circular motions ensure that you have evenly textured surface all over the base. And then we're moving back to Pro Acryl Silver, and we're using this basically in the same way how we did highlight the armor and the trims. we're wiping the brush out just with a tiny amount of color in it, and then we're doing strokes from every side of the edges just to highlight all of the edges on the base. And within 2 minutes you should have a base that looks like that. I just want to say a couple of things about the review as a final message. I only would recommend you stuff. I would use my own. This is why I did no reviews so far, but this airbrush really felt like an improvement to me. And this is why this is definitely a recommendation from myself. But now let's take a look into the final result of our Thousand Sun. Thank you everybody for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and I hope you had some fun.